I was just wondering what you think the biggest need for the Maple Leafs is this offseason if they're going to run it back with this group. How do you fill out the peripheral of that group, and what is their biggest need?
Well, I'd say it's a two-part answer for me. First off, what is the biggest need? And this is almost one I didn't necessarily project at the beginning of the season, but it certainly is now, and that's goaltending. You've got Jack Campbell, who's a UFA, Peter Mrazek, who had what can only be described as a nightmare of a season this year between injuries and performance. And so right now, going into next season, the Leafs goaltending tandem is currently Peter Mrazek and Erik Källgren. That's simply just not good enough to win. I don't think that would be a surprise or a shocking statement to anybody. So that's what needs to be addressed first. We'll get into, I'm sure, more specifics as to, free agents that you think may be or that we think may be a good option for this team. But goaltending is something that needs to be solidified before you focus on anything else, especially with the fact that you're looking for a number one, and that's going to eat up a lot of your cap. And then second, I would say, as you've just alluded to, it's going to be a lot around the periphery of this team. I thought at times, ultimately when it comes down to it, and you see it in the finals right now, it's the top players who are going to pull you over the hump. You see Cale Makar putting up big numbers on Colorado. You see Nikita Kucherov, Andrei Vasilevsky, Steven Stamkos. You go down the list of big name players who've had clutch performances for their team, and that will be the same for the Leafs if they want to get ahead. But you do need those periphery players, and case in point, Nick Paul, Game 7 against the Leafs. He's the one that comes up with the clutch performance, and you're going to need those over the course of the playoffs. The Leafs' fourth line, in my opinion, this year just didn't have that capability.
I agree.
And not to anybody's fault, in my opinion. Jason Spezza is obviously retired and was at the end of his career, and I thought gave you some good spurts throughout the season, but with age comes decreased productivity, and that's what we saw out of him. Same with Wayne Simmons. I think he's one of the few players on this team who has some bite, will go in the corners, will drop the gloves if need be, but Wayne Simmons right now is not, of course, the Wayne Simmons that we saw with the Philadelphia Flyers. He's probably not even the Wayne Simmons that we saw when he first arrived in Toronto before the I believe it was a wrist injury that he had. Mm-hmm. And before that was quite a productive player. So I think you're going to need to find some replacements at the bottom of your lineup, who know their role, but can also be effective and can be effective for the long term. There's a lot of turnover coming at that bottom of the roster, I believe, if you look down the list of UFAs and even a couple RFAs. So right now, aside from those guys, I think you have a couple other guys currently slotted into roles who, may be a little bit more undefined in terms of their career and their specific role on the team, and that's never really helpful for anybody when that's the case.
Yeah, so talking about the fourth line, do you think there are some guys from the Marlies who graduate, or do you think they just need some more experience there, guys who know that that's their position and they're not trying to claw up the lineup? So I'm thinking about guys like Abruzzese, I'm thinking about Steves, I'm thinking about maybe even Joey Anderson, who just turned 24. It feels like he's been in the Leaf system forever since that trade for Andreas Johnson. But there's a few guys there, even a Nick Robertson, and I want to get into him later, but do you think there's a spot for some of those guys, or do you think they just need a complete turnover?
I think ultimately you need both, because all these teams that end up being successful, you have internal competition. Right now, if you don't sign any free agents, if you don't bring any guys in on PTOs, essentially what you have is 3 open spots on your fourth line for guys from the Marlies just to walk right into, and you're not even going to make them earn it. I think, at least in my opinion, as somebody who has not seen a lot of the Marlies recently, but watched games when guys similar to who you've just named, the Abruzzeses, the Nick Robertsons, so on and so forth, have come up and played. They're not at the point where they should just be gifted roster spots. Those are guys who need to commit to a role, who need to understand what they're being brought in to do, which may not be the same as what they do at the AHL level or what they've previously done in junior or college. And they need to battle. They need to, if they do make that team, if they get there, they need to feel like they're one game away from being sent right back. That's what ultimately will bring out that the play and the compete that you need from those guys. And in my opinion, none of those guys, while they are, I think, on track to be effective players, none of those guys are at the point of their careers where they should just be handed a position on an NHL team.